Welcome.
You are watching Line Screw 1. Well, hello tubers. I hope you're doing well wherever you are in this crazy universe we call YouTube. Today we're going to talk about how to travel to Canada in 2021 during, that thing that's going on around the world. So, anywho, the old rules that I've used to talk about in previous videos about how to travel into Canada, those rules still apply. So if you're a felon, don't bother coming. If you don't have a passport, don't bother coming. Just don't want you to waste your time. But for the rest of you, there's going to be a lot of people that need to come to Canada or pass through Canada, and we're going to talk about that today so that you can have the minimal amount of inconvenience or surprise when you want to come up. Because let's face it, between Canada and the US, our economies and our people are so integrated. We got millions of families and friends on both sides of the border, and there's actually millions of Americans who happen to also be Canadian. So many of you are going to have to come to Canada. Maybe you're traveling to Alaska for a job or relocation. Who knows? I want to get you through the process and tell you what is going on, because there's a lot of changes, and I'm going to put links in the description in the video down below so that you can check the current information from the Government of Canada website. So let's get going. Well, the good news is you can travel to Canada. The bad news is it's going to be a hassle, and there are restrictions and caveats. So first of all, the land border to drive to Canada is pretty much closed to non-discretionary travel, which means all those lovely Americans that we used to rely on that were under the age of 21 that came to Canada, this very liberal, low drinking age, 18, 19, depending where you're going, you can't come up here for a drink. You can't come up here for shopping. No, you cannot. That land border is closed to non-discretionary travel. So unless you're coming up as a returning citizen, or you've got some sort of business reason, or you're part of a flight crew or commercial transport. Commercial transport truck drivers are always welcome because they're always bringing freight across the border, including produce, food, you name it, pharmaceuticals even. So there are exemptions for people that are part of flight crews or commercial transport truck drivers. They don't even require a quarantine, and we're going to get going about that 14-day quarantine because you probably heard the rumors. So generally speaking, don't bother to even drive across the land border unless you're going to Alaska. That is the only exception to Americans. Now, you're going to have to prove why you're going to Alaska, meaning that you're relocating, starting a seasonal job, something of that order. So make sure you have all your documents in place to prove that. Now, you will be allowed to transit through Canada. It's a long drive, done it many times between the Canadian border and Alaska. I used to even live in the Yukon. So what you're going to have to do is prove that you are transiting, and they're going to give you a certain number of hours to transit. You cannot make detours at all, none whatsoever. You can only stop for food, lodging, and that's it. And you keep on trucking until you get to Alaska, report to the Canadian authorities at the border that you are now leaving, and off you go. Now, you also will encounter a checkpoint when you enter the territory of the Yukon. That's your last leg through the Alaska Highway, or as many of you Americans still call it, the Alcan Highway. So keep in mind that they're going to give you 24 hours from the point you get to the Alaska to the Yukon, checkpoint on the Alaska Highway to continue the last leg of your transit through, and hopefully everything should go fine for you. That is the only exception for what you'd call discretionary travel. But trust me, any US license plates or foreign license plates, they stick out like a sore thumb. And if you get caught detouring or doing something that you're not supposed to, you will be fined. So just warning you, I don't want you to waste any money on government fines when you don't have to. Government's got enough of your money already. Don't give them any more. Now, the easiest way to travel rather than driving is to fly. Now, there are new rules. You can just fly on up. But this offer to come visit Canada is only open to returning Canadians and Americans. So, for example, if you are living in the United States with a green card or a work permit, and you happen to be a citizen of New Zealand, Australia, anywhere in Europe, it doesn't really matter. If you're traveling on a non-US passport, you will not be able to enter Canada, period. So forget about it. Now, for the rest of you American US passport holders, you can come to Canada, but here's what's going to happen. You can only fly through 4 gateway cities. And those cities are Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal. Those are the only gateway cities you may enter by air. Now, before you're even allowed to board the aircraft, you must present a negative molecular COVID test that was done within 72 hours prior to departure. So make sure you don't run into the clock ticking past that 72 hours because you will not be allowed to board the aircraft. You're going to have to pay for that yourself. That's just part of the, the cost of travel now, I guess. Children under the age of 5 are exempt. Now that you got your negative molecular COVID test results in hand, you can board the flight and fly to one of those 4 cities. Now, when you do arrive, you are going to be screened and you're going to be sent to a 3-day hotel stay that you're going to have to pay for, and it's going to be 2,000 Canadian dollars, which is about, $17.50 US right now. And you're going to have to stay there and wait for a test result to also be confirmed negative. And you're going to have to stay in that hotel room, and they will feed you, and you will have health care, check up on you, and you're going to be marooned in a hotel room for 3 days at your expense. After the 3 days, and you are still confirmed to be negative, you must continue your 14-day quarantine. So you're going to have 11 more days to quarantine somewhere. Now, you're going to have a plan for that. You better have a vacation property that you have rented or that you own, or something of that order, or you're going to have to pay for more hotel stays to finish your 14-day quarantine. And trust me, they're checking up on you. If you get caught, you're either going to get booted out of the country or fined, or both. So don't run into that problem. So the bottom line is, what I'm trying to say is, it's a pretty expensive and onerous hassle to travel to Canada. But if you've got some sort of business reason, you're selling some real estate, maybe you got a good job offer, if you got a 6-figure job offer and you need to come up here to do something, I guess there are some situations where it's probably justified, but it's going to be a big hassle. So I want you to be prepared and ready for what awaits you. Now, these rules apply to Americans and Canadians equally, whether you're returning to Canada or whether you're just coming up here for whatever reason. Now, generally speaking, the more legitimate your reason is to come, providing you can prove it, you're really going to have a little less of a hassle. Keep in mind, if you fly into any of those 4 Canadian cities and rent a car and decide to go to an area that also has a further quarantine requirement, you're going to have to quarantine for another 14 days. For example, if you flew into Montreal and rented a car and then drove to the maritime provinces of, say, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, or Newfoundland, you will also have to do another 14-day quarantine. The same is also true for the Yukon. The net result of all these new rules is that the travel industry is pretty much toast for international travel, because I know I'd love to spend a couple weeks in the south of Spain, maybe go down to South America. I'd love to go anywhere. Shit, I'd even love to be in Arizona right now for a few weeks. But the hassle and the expense of having to do that, because I could just board a flight and leave right now, but I'd have to go through all that rigmarole and the quarantine and all the costs. It's generally not worth it for most people. Now, whether you can afford that inconvenience and the financial cost of all that, that's your own particular business. Keep in mind, these rules are always changing. It's a very dynamic situation, so always don't go by word of mouth or what you heard on social media. Go on an actual Government of Canada website and check the rules for yourself, because they can change by the day, by the week, or by the month. So that's it in a nutshell, how to travel to Canada in 2021. Put your comments down below. I know it sucks, but hey, the more money they can save on healthcare that is taxpayer funded, I'm kind of happy about that, because I don't want to pay any more taxes if our numbers go too crazy up here. Hey, if you got a private healthcare system in a different country, you might have a different opinion than me, but hey, as a Canadian, I don't really like paying more higher of taxes than I already am. So I'm going to have to live with this in the meantime, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing many of you all around the world, because I love to travel. So perhaps we can get through this as soon as we can and get back to business as usual. So in the meantime, folks, stay safe, keep your wheels to the ground. I'll talk to you soon. Over and out.
I got you, I got you.